Hey there, I'm Amy from thecrazycraftlady.com. Patriotic 4th of July American flag stuff is out in full force at Dollar Tree right now. So come craft with me. I'm going to make 4 different patriotic projects to set out before Memorial Day. I'm going to keep them up all through 4th of July. 2 are for my front entryway and 2 are for my back patio. Let's get making. Dollar Tree sells these American flag chair covers, and I'm going to turn them into pillows. So the chair covers have a seam on the top and the left and right hand side, but not at the bottom. So I just used my hot glue gun. I initially considered sewing this, but this is super, super slippery, plasticky type fabric. I don't have the sewing skills to run this through a sewing machine, and then even I thought stitching it by hand just wouldn't work. And I was worried that my hot glue would melt this fabric, but it didn't. I did a little test on one corner before I started, and it worked just fine. So what I did is I just pinched under, I made a little seam so that nothing frays, and then I just hot glued along as I went along the bottom of the flag. But then I left a bit of an opening because we have to stuff our pillow, right? If you have like fiber fill or whatever stuffing, use that. I had these super old sad pillow forms from IKEA, like, I kid you not, close to 12 years ago or close to 10 years ago. So they were super flat and sad. So I just cut them open and reused that stuffing. So waste not, want not, right? In this economy, we can't afford to be throwing pillows away. So I just used all that stuffing to fill up my little American flag pillow there. I ripped it out in little sections and stuffed it in. And then when I got close to being completely filled, I made the opening in my flag just a little bit smaller. So I hot glued. It's a little tricky hot gluing this when there's stuffing in and you can't lay it flat on your work surface. But it doesn't matter if the seam isn't perfectly straight because we're going to cover it, which you'll see in a second. But then once I had gotten that hole to be a little smaller, then I added my final bit of stuffing and I used like a little stick to fill in the corners there, you'll see, because you want everything to be kind of evenly stuffed or filled. This is like Build-A-Bear American Flag Edition, right? But then I just finished hot gluing that final little bit of the seam there. And then I decided this looked unfinished. So I was debating what to finish this off with. And I had purchased one of these plant hangers at Dollar Tree. And I thought it was just the perfect width for this project. So it's kind of in between. So, Papa Bear is the nautical jute rope from Dollar Tree. Baby Bear would be twine. This is Mama Bear. It's in between the two sizes. So not too thick, not too thin, just right. But there are a lot of knots that you need to unknot. So that took me a minute and it's a little complicated. But then you have this, thick twine looking rope that you can finish your pillow off with. So I just twisted the end, hot glued it right at the bottom of my pillow. You always want to start at the bottom of the project. And then I very patiently hot glued all the way around the seam of the pillow. So I worked in little sections, pressed the rope down, pinched it down. I will say if you want a more finished looking project, add your hot glue line and then working from the front side towards the back, press that rope down so that if any hot glue seeps out, it's on the back side of the pillow, not on the front side. I hope that makes sense. So you just kind of like add the line of hot glue and then roll that rope over it and pinch it down so that the excess, if it does, oozes out the back. But this took a minute, went all the way around the pillow. And then this rope was, I kid you not, an inch. I had an inch to spare. So when you get to the end, just trim off that end, try not to let it fray too much, and then hot glue it right down at the bottom of your pillow. And I made 2 of these to go on my little bench in my happy place on my back patio. The dollar store craft aisle usually has a variety of unfinished wood pieces, and for this I just grabbed this little wooden rectangle. If you want to use scrap wood, feel free. So I just set it vertically on my work surface, grabbed some painter's tape, and I taped about a third off the top. And then I grabbed my trusty white Rust-Oleum chalk paint and my flat 1-inch paintbrush, and I painted the bottom 2/3 of the little unfinished wood piece there. I can't believe that I'm almost getting to the end of this white Rust-Oleum chalk paint can. It has lasted me forever, and I must have done at least 50 projects with it, if not more. It's crazy how far one can of this paint goes. But then I peeled off the tape, and then I grabbed, this is Folk Art matte paint in the color Cloudy Day. In real life, it looks more blue. For whatever reason, on my camera, to me, on my screen, it looks more purple, like more periwinkle, but trust me. But I did decide it was a little too light for my liking, so I went back with Waverly chalk paint in the color Night Sky. You could do any sort of like lightish navy paint, and I just kind of mixed it right in on the project. Maybe not advisable, but you know, it worked. I didn't have to wait for it to dry and then do a whole new coat of paint. And I think the two paint colors mixed together worked out to be just lovely. So then once all of that had dried, it's time to add your red stripes because this is a flag craft. So I taped off the blue paint, and then I use my nonstick scissors and I just cut painter's tape in half. If you want to buy thin painter's tape, you can. I think it's just easy enough to just cut it in half. And then you just add your little stripes, tape off little sections, and evenly stagger your little cut pieces of painter's tape there, smooth it down. And then I grabbed my Folk Art matte paint in the color Cardinal Red, which I think is perfect for 4th of July. And I just kind of painted in the direction of the paint lines, right? You don't want to be going against the paint or against the painter's tape there. And then while the paint was still wet, I peeled off my tape at a 45-degree angle. This way you get crisp lines. I did have a little bit of bleed because I don't think I smoothed my tape down enough. I was worried about the white paint underneath not being fully dry, so that was on me. But I'll show you how I fixed it. Then I just grabbed a regular old paint stir stick, painted that with the white Rust-Oleum chalk paint, as well as 3 little wooden stars. Now, I just had these in my craft stash because I have a craft collecting problem. We won't call it hoarding. It's just collecting, right? And so I just painted those. If you don't have, you could just paint stars right on the project. I just wanted to use these because I had them and I thought they were cute. And now you'll see my paint bleed. Whoops, but we're gonna distress this project anyway. So I started with my sanding block and I kind of sanded along that edge to make the paint bleed a little less obvious. And then I also painted all the way around sanded. What am I talking about? I've been talking about painting so much. I sanded all the way around the edge of the project just to distress it a little bit and let some of that wood grain show through. Now this gets a little dusty, so it'll make it look like your colors are really muted, but just take a rag, I used a Clorox wipe, and just wipe off your project. And then it's time to assemble. So I used E6000 for permanent hold with a little bit of hot glue for instant hold so I could finish this project faster. So just a dab of E6000 on the back of each star, followed by a dab of hot glue. And you're in business. Just secure your little stars. If you have smaller wooden stars, you could do more, like 7. I would stick with an even number though, whatever you do. No, not even, odd number. And then my paint stick, this is optional, but I just used my miter shears to cut at a 45-degree angle so that this could be a stake into a potted plant and it would go into the dirt easier. And then I also just glued that paint stick right to the back of my project using the same method of combining E6000 glue and hot glue. And then since this is going outside, I used a coat of outdoor Mod Podge just to protect my surface. This may not be totally necessary. If you want this project to weather over time, leave it unsealed, but I chose to take the extra step to protect my project, and that was that. So here is my little American flag stake sign that I put in my potted hydrangea out front, and I just think this is the cutest little 4th of July project. For this craft, we're going to use a American flag door banner from Dollar Tree. It's this really long banner, and I have this fern wreath, just any basic plain wreath, boxwood, fern, magnolia, whatever, just a plain green wreath that you can then reuse for the rest of the year, other seasons. So unroll the banner, take out the little hanger and that little rod, and all you're gonna do, I hate to even call this a craft, it's just a lazy girl method for, decorating a wreath. And you're just gonna kind of fold it into sections, pinch it together, and then weave it in and out of the greenery on your wreath. So like I said, I think this would work really well on a boxwood. I happen to have a faux fern wreath. And then once 4th of July is over, I'm gonna take the same wreath and I'm gonna add different embellishments and decorate for the rest of the summer. And then I'll probably put it in storage and then bring it out next spring and, pop lemons in it or honeybees or something like that. And then I just made a bow to add a little bit more. So this is old ribbon from 2023 from Dollar Tree. Make one loop, and then you're going to grab a different color ribbon. So anything complementary. I made like a figure 8 here, and then pinch it in the center, wrap it, 3 or 4 times with some twine, secure it in the back with a double knot. Super duper easy. And then I was going to use a 3rd color, but I decided to keep it a little more simple. So I used that same ribbon from my first layer, and I made another figure 8, but this time I kept the tails on. Wrap it around a few times with twine, secure it in the back with a double knot. And then we want to put this all together. So layer your 2 bows plus your loop, pinch your loop at the center, and then pop that in the back. So you have 4 loops of your base and then 2 loops of the ribbon in front of it. Then wrap the whole thing in the center with twine and secure it in the back with a double knot. Then you just want to fluff out the bows, loops, and then trim with a little kite tail, 45-degree angle, and then burn the ends so they don't fray. And then you can just secure this right onto your wreath with twine and a knot in the back. And here is my little wreath for my front door. Head to the dollar store and grab a hula hoop and 9 bunches of faux patriotic flowers. I just did red, white, and blue here. And then I took my hula hoop outside and I spray painted the whole thing front and back with blue spray paint. I think my neighbors officially think I've lost my mind because when the weather's nice, I'm out like every weekend spray painting something. But then I just took my faux flowers and I cut the tags off. If anyone has a tip for making these easier to remove, I am all ears. I always really struggle with these because the sticky sides stick together and it's so close to the stem. I don't know. I'd love to hear if you have any tips. But then I just grabbed my floral cutters and I snipped the bottom 4 little sections off each stem. So maybe like 3 inches or so, just to make these a little easier to work with and get them to stick nicely and follow the curve of the hoop, because we're going to secure these to the hula hoop using zip ties. So I also buy my zip ties at Dollar Tree, and I worked in the sections of 2, so 2 stems at a time, and I worked in a blue, white, red pattern. So I did blue and white, secured them to the hula hoop with a zip tie, and then I used my scissors to just trim the zip tie. And then next was red and then blue again. So you'll see these are a little staggered. So the red is up further and the blue is down a little bit. So you want these kind of evenly spaced. Once again, secure the zip tie. and then trim off the excess plastic there. And you'll see there are 9 stems. So I got 3 red, 3 white, 3 blue. So just keep going down in that blue, white, red pattern until you get to the very end. And since it's an odd number, the final stem you'll just secure by itself. And then these flowers are messy, so I had to clean up. I used my little desktop vacuum. It's super handy. And then I just decided to make a giant bow to cover that final zip tie at the bottom of the hoop. So I started with this giant burlap ribbon and I made just a loop with it. I pinched it in the center and wrapped it a handful of times with twine and then just secured it simply with a double knot. So this is the base of my jumbo bow. Then I took the same burlap ribbon. This time I made a figure 8 and I left the tail ends on. But other than that, it's the same as the first little section. So once again, wrap the whole thing with twine a few times and secure with the double knot. So here we go. Like you want to like stagger the little loops on the bow. And then I added this blue and white check ribbon. I think I got this at Dollar Tree in the fall. Although it's not really giving me fall vibes, but I bought it because I thought it was cute. So the same thing, I did first a figure 8, and then I did a second figure 8, and I pinched it in the center, fluffed out the loops, and trimmed off the tail ends. Then I wrapped it in the center with twine and tied it in a knot. I thought this was going to be my middle section, but I made these loops just a tad too small, so this ended up being the top layer of my bow. So then I went in and had to make the middle layer of my bow. And so for that, I just went into my craft stash. I had written on the spool 2023. So this was from Dollar Tree 2023. Use whatever ribbon you like. This is what I used. So I made a little figure 8, just like with the blue and white check one, but I made the loops just a little bigger and then tied it in the center. And then it's time to secure all of your layers together. And so I just kind of fluffed out the loops of the bows the way I liked. And then I secured the bow to the base of my hula hoop wreath with twine. So once again, just wrap it with twine a few times and secure it in the back with the double knot. And then I finished it off. I cut a blunt edge on the burlap so it wouldn't fray. And then for the other 4 pieces of ribbon, I did a kite tail. So you just fold it in half and then cut it at a 45-degree angle at the bottom. And then very carefully use a lighter to burn the ends so they don't fray. You only see a second of this because my camera battery died, so sorry. But that's it. Here's my finished hula hoop wreath. I hung it using little vinyl siding clips. I'll link to them. I got them on Amazon on my back patio. Also, help with my hydrangea. I think I got too impatient and I set it out too early in the season. It got too cold at night, but it is still showing signs of life. Do I just trim off all of the dried hydrangeas and hope that new ones sprout out? If my gardening friends with green thumbs would let me know in the comments, I would be most appreciative. Thank you. Hey, if you enjoyed watching these crafts, give one of these videos a watch. Thanks so much.